this reaction. At the same time, the broadening of political opportunities for white males, especially the growth of political parties and the expansion of the franchise, diminished the importance of non-voters, including women, in the electoral process, and led to an increasing focus on a more restricted group, white male electors. The era of democratization for men thus produced a narrowing of political possibilities for women. For a long time it was assumed that the American Revolution had not created a corresponding revolution for women. Because the new nation did not grant women political rights, their status was thought to have changed little. The path-breaking works of Linda Kerber and Mary Beth Norton, published in 1980, demolished this belief. By expanding the definition of politics beyond the formal realm of voting and holding public office, it became apparent that women had indeed been active participants in the nation's formative event, the American Revolution. Women talked, wrote, and thought about political ideas, and they expressed their sentiments in political action, through the making and wearing of homespun, participation in economic boycotts, and sacrifices made in the course of the war. Women contributed to the success of the revolutionary cause. In the process, they also became politically aware and engaged. During and after the war, men not only acknowledged women's political role, but also encouraged and praised their contributions. Historians such as Catherine Allgore, Susan Branson, Cynthia Kerner, Simon Newman, David Waldstreicher, and Jan Lewis have more recently demonstrated the continuation of women's political involvement during the first years of the new republic. Borrowing from the social sciences, they define politics to include not only the formal institutions of government, but also a wide variety of informal norms, symbolic actions, and everyday behaviors. In addition to studying the behavior of women, they also examine assumptions about gender roles and the power relations between the sexes. This approach expands the possibilities for understanding the extent to which political institutions either reflect, reinforce, or subvert the existing gender hierarchy. What these historians have found is that even as conflict between Federalists and Democratic Republicans was transforming the country's political landscape, many middle-class and elite white women embraced a political role for themselves. The wheels of government would have turned less effectively without their presence. There has nonetheless been some resistance to this approach. Despite important exceptions, political historians and women's historians of the early American Republic sometimes still write as if the two fields had no common ground. Traditional political historians portray women as peripheral to the central political events of the time, excusing themselves from taking women seriously because of women's lack of formal political rights. Their focus remains on the great white men who shaped national politics and policies. The presidencies of larger-than-life figures such as George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, the conflict between intellectual titans such as James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, the idiosyncrasies of John Adams or Aaron Burr. When they broaden the scope of discussion to include the middling or lower classes, the focus of the story, as in Sean Wilentze's The Rise of American Democracy, Jefferson to Lincoln, often continues to be on white males. If they do mention women, they tend to do so in a separate discussion, parallel to the main narrative. Early American women's historians, on the other hand, often depict developments in male politics as tangential to women's lives. Some inveigh against privileging white male politics, others want to scrap the political narrative altogether, seeking instead to recover the substance of women's daily lives and allow women to speak in their own voices. By studying women of all social classes and races, their works have fruitfully revealed, among other things, a thriving female domestic economy, sophisticated social reform movements, and diverse notions of womanhood in the early republic. Yet minimizing the importance of women's relationship to the state has a cost. The period between the American Revolution and the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848 appears to be nothing more than a frustrating hiatus in the development of women's rights. Important changes in the popular discourse about women's rights have been overlooked or ignored. This study, then, operates at the intersection of political history, women's history, and gender history.